Well, why have you bothered to do that? Why not create something new?
Because it's easier to do.
Well, isn't this sort of a joke, then, that you're playing on the public?
No. It gives me something to do.
Andy Warhol was an innovative leader in the cultural revolution of pop art. His art was groundbreaking and it had a profound impact on the culture of the 60s and 70s, thus providing the foundation to his legacy. Pop art, a movement that restored realism to avant-garde art, first emerged in Great Britain at the end of the 1950s as a reaction against the seriousness of abstract expressionism. By the late 1950s and early 1960s, a cultural revolution was underway, led by activists, thinkers, and artists who sought to rethink and even overturn what was, in their eyes, a stifling social order ruled by conformity. The Vietnam War incited mass protests, the Civil Rights Movement sought equality for African Americans, and the women's liberation movement gained momentum. Pop artists began to look for inspiration in the world around them, representing everyday items, consumer goods, and mass media. Warhol was influenced greatly by Roy Lichtenstein, one of the pioneers of pop art. Warhol expanded on his philosophy that art could be made from anything.
Andy Warhol was the youngest of his family, born in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania on August 6, 1928, into a working-class family of Slovakian immigrants.
Bedridden as a child with a debilitating illness, his mother gave him drawing lessons to pass time, introducing him to the world of art and leading to the start of his career. Later, at age 9, she gave him a camera, paving the way for his love of film. Free art classes were offered at Carnegie Institute in Pittsburgh. Warhol took advantage of these while in elementary school, giving him a better background in art.
After he had finished schooling, he moved to New York where he would spend the rest of his life. One of his first magazine jobs was with Glamour. He turned to painting and drawing in the 1950s, and in 1952 he had his first solo exhibition at the Hugo Gallery, which featured 50 drawings based on the writings of Truman Capote. Within a year, he had assignments as a top commercial artist from Columbia Records, Glamour Magazine, Harper's Bazaar, NBC, Tiffany & Co., and Vogue. By 1955, he was freelancing on a regular basis for the I. Miller Shoe Company, which published his drawings weekly in the fashion section of the New York Times.
For Warhol, his art was the essence of Americanness, equality, order, and social balance. It was a realistic way for him to express his path and the simplicity of his paintings like the Campbell Soup can. By the spring of 1963, every major museum in the country had installed a pop art exhibition, and Andy Warhol, being a leader, was considered a necessity in all of them. Through the 60s and 70s, Warhol emerged as a force in the pop art movement. His Marilyn Monroe, Campbell's Soup, and Elvis Presley works dominated the pop art scene. The 1960s and early 70s were a widely prolific time in Warhol's life, with the production of some of his most iconic works.
It'd be like a store, and they just come in and ask you for a can of soup, and that was just the easiest way to do something.
The work of Andy Warhol has always been unique. His art was inspired by things that were part of his life but never had any deep significance.
Oh, I used to eat it every day. I still do, so.
Warhol's Campbell's Soup paintings were extremely successful. When asked what they signified, Warhol simply replied, "They're things I had as a child." When Warhol was asked about the symbolism of our culture and if that played a major influence in the Campbell's Soup show, he replied no, and stated that they were just objects to him.
Warhol has been accused of ridiculing the American middle-class values by erasing the distinction between popular and high culture, but in Warhol's mind, he believed pop art was not a satiric comment on American life. Monotony and repetition became the hallmarks of his multi-image, mass-produced silkscreen paintings.
Why do you so often repeat the image?
Well, I always think I don't do the first one good, so I try to do it more, in portraits, that's what I did. And then I try to do them over, and then after a while, you have more than one.
In an interview with Warhol, he was asked what his life goals were for his future, and replied, "I am not going to stop painting. I want my paintings to sell for $25,000. Even though he appears uninterested in the vast majority of interviews he gave, it is clear that this was his passion and something that Warhol wanted to make a successful living in. Today, his paintings sell for over $100 million, proving that his success was much more than he could have ever anticipated. His studio was nicknamed The Factory because it was an assembly line for silkscreens. It was silver painted and foil draped.
The Factory was the most popular hangout place, famed for its groundbreaking parties. Warhol's social status attracting many, including actors, drag queens, socialites, models, and musicians. known as Warhol's Superstars, who starred in his films. Known for its efficient assembly line with the silkscreen paintings, the factory was a place where Andy was able to mass-produce his work. Commercial methods like silkscreening produced multiples, downplaying the artist's hand and subverting the idea of originality.
In 1973, Warhol launched the magazine Interview, a publication on his fascination with the cult of celebrities. The magazine features intimate conversations between some of the world's biggest celebrities, artists, musicians, and creative thinkers. After his death, the magazine reflected on the life of Andy Warhol. 25 years after his death, they noted his legacy was everywhere, from his constantly copied pop art paintings to his famous 15 minutes of fame quote, to the continued existence of Interview, to his seamlessly glamorous New York lifestyle with the superstars. Warhol worked in film and made his first films with a Bolex camera during the 1960s. Today, they are considered avant-garde cinema classics. He made nearly 600 films and 2,500 videos. After his first film in 1963, his career was almost entirely devoted to filmmaking between 1965 and 1968. Yet this body of work has only recently been considered as central to Warhol's work. Andy had complained about mixing paints one day when taking a break from shooting his movies. He said that the movies were more fun, but the impression gained was that he was absorbed and happy in this activity. He spent many weeks filming movies with people like Jane Holzer, a model. He is best known for the slow-moving, silent early films Sleep, featuring a man sleeping for 6 hours. In the space of 5 years, Warhol made over 50 films that display a wide array of themes and approaches using sound, color, and narrative.
Warhol removed his films from distribution in 1970, which is why it has taken time for them to emerge. Since 1982, the Andy Warhol Film Project has worked with the Museum of Modern Art to preserve his films, and now has a collection of over 60 pieces of his work. In 1968, he suffered a serious gunshot wound from a radical feminist author named Valerie Solanas. She had a long, troubling past, and after college began writing the Scum Manifesto, urging women to overthrow the government, eliminate the money system, institute complete automation, and eliminate the male sex. It prompted him to document his life to an ever more compulsive degree. He employed interns and assistants to transcribe the content of his most minor expenses, which amounted to over 3,400 audio tapes, which were then published as the Warhol Diaries in 1987.
Earth angel, the one I adore, love you forever.
Andy Warhol died in New York City on February 22, 1987 at age 58. After making good recovery from a routine gallbladder surgery, Warhol died in his sleep from a sudden post-operative cardiac arrhythmia. Dressed in a black cashmere suit, a paisley tie, a platinum wig, and sunglasses, Warhol appeared no different in his open casket than he had all throughout his life. He was buried in Pittsburgh next to his mother and father, and with him in the grave lay a copy of Interview magazine and a bottle of Estee Lauder Beautiful.
Someday I'll be the vision of your happiness. Oh, oh, earth angel, earth angel.
His will dedicated that his entire estate, with the exception of a few legacies to family members, should be used to create a foundation dedicated to the advancement of the visual arts. The foundation's programs and initiatives continue to evolve and expand to address the needs of the visual arts communities nationwide. His legacy lives on in the Andy Warhol Museum. It opened in May of 1994, 2 years after the establishment of the Warhol Foundation. Known as the Warhol, it features 7 floors of gallery and exhibition space.
Andy would have loved tonight in the museum because it's really exciting. It has everything in it, and all the people are glamorous.
Andy Warhol remains not only a fascinating cultural leader, but an inspiration to new generations of artists, curators, filmmakers, designers, and cultural innovators all over the world. His curiosity resulted in a considerable body of work that spanned every available medium and contributed to the collapse of boundaries between high and low culture, paving a path for a timeless legacy as a leader in the culture of pop art.